Good evening and welcome to Across the Pitch. We're the soccer show for people who think the USMNT is the name of the next Ninja Turtles movie.
Well, to be fair, mate, I think the Ninja Turtles have had more success than the men's national team in recent years.
There was a couple of U.S. players who made it through to the round of 16 of the Champions League today, but we'll talk about that more a little bit later.
Yes, you were very happy in pointing that out, Phil.
My name is Phil Kennedy, and I'm here with my co-host,
Arran is.
And we're here to talk about association football with a little bit of an American twist like we do here about once a week now. We have a lot on the table today. We're mostly going to talk about the Champions League happenings. Big day today as the round of 16 was finalized. We're also going to go over the Premier League. We're going to talk some about our team of the month, Sheffield United. And we have a special, we'll call it a coach of the show. We usually have a player of the show, but we actually have a coach of the show this week. And we'll talk more about him later, but...
Can't wait. Actually, I can't wait to talk about him. I just can't wait to pronounce his name.
We're going to start with that, or what did you want to start with tonight, Aaron?
Well, Phil, I think we have an across-the-pitch injury update.
That's right. I hear that your value has gone down on transfer market since the last time we talked.
It's true. I've had a non-football related kicking injury, which has resulted in me breaking my metatarsal.
I hear that you Lukaku'd a chair was what happened.
Yeah, I did. It was, I'm going to say it was drunken shenanigans, and I guess, misstepped by several feet, as Lukaku is known for, and cracked my toe against a very solid chair. I have to say, it's one of the most solid chairs in my house, probably the world. And subsequently break my toe. So you know that episode of The Simpsons, where Bart goes to Australia, he has to pay off a phone bill, and they bring in a capital punishment, and of course it's the guy in a giant boot. That's me. I'm the guy in the giant boot right now. It's not fun, but anyway, we shall persevere.
The good news is that I hear it's about a 4 to 6 week injury, so we won't need to pick up anybody else in the January transfer window.
Yes. My mouth is still in good form, so don't worry about that. I don't need to use my feet too often doing podcasts.
Well, when you hit the cymbals.
Yes. But you're back from injury this week. You've gotten over your back spasms or whatever it was.
Oh yes, I've gotten over the cold. The weather is dried up here in the desert, and I'm back to 100% this week. And speaking of 100%, there is only one team in the Premier League with a 100% loss-free record, and that's one of the major happenings that happened this week.
Absolutely, and it was a bit of a shock. I think we even spoke about it briefly last week that Man City looked, basically invincible.
They looked more Machine City than Man City.
Hey, I like that, Machine City. I'm pretty sure Pep Guardiola, he had a few words about that. He's like, no, it's all you guys in the media that are making this up. It's a challenging league, which it is. But Chelsea went and put a big dent in their armour, and all of a sudden they look somewhat fallible.
The thing that really surprised me is, as we had said the other week, is that Chelsea had been on a backslide a bit. But the one thing that I think that would really stick out to me is what we were talking about last week, is how there was 2 Premier League games in 1 week, and it really seemed like Manchester City put out their best lineup for Watford on Tuesday.
Bizarrely.
Didn't maybe have a lot of their starters on the field, whereas Chelsea had their best lineup and played some younger players on Tuesday, actually got upset in that game, but they had their best lineup. So it was Chelsea's best lineup at home against Manchester City's B-plus team, I would say.
I don't know if Man City has a B-plus team. They're still a solid squad whenever they roll out, but I will say Chelsea at home is a difficult situation for any team, regardless of who you are. They're very, very solid at home. They don't lose many games at home, Chelsea. It's a bit of a fortress there. But they certainly showed them how to play the game, and that was quite remarkable, actually. I was blown away by how aggressive, I guess, Chelsea were against Man City. You don't see that too often.
Yeah, I really think that caught him off guard, and it really was a complete 90-minute performance, because not only did they beat him, it was a clean sheet.
Yes, it was. That's very, very unusual. By the way, I should actually point out for our American listeners, a clean sheet means you haven't had any goals scored against you. I don't know if that translates in hockey like that, does it?
They don't use that term in hockey. They just use shutout.
Right. Oh, yeah. No, you wouldn't use that in the English Premier League.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard him use shutout in soccer.
No. But there you go, same thing.
Clean sheet is a shutout. They use shutout in baseball, and even in football, somewhat they use shutout. Not quite as much, but
right. So we're learning stuff. This is great, Phil. This is great. I love what we're doing here.
Are we ready to talk about the Champions League?
Yes, I think so.
The big news of the day was that they finalized the final 16. And did you want to tell folks a little bit about how the final round of 16 works and the Champions League?
Yeah. So up until this point, there have been and now I'm going to have to do maths when it's talking about there are 8 groups. So groups A through to H. How many is that off the top of your head? What is that? 10? I don't know why they just don't do it in numbers. But anyway, what happens is you've got 4 teams in each of these groups, A through H, and they play for home and against each other across the season, across the early rounds. And that is called just the group stages. So you play each of those 3 other teams twice. The top 2 teams then progress into what's called the round of 16. So if your math is working for you there, you have 32 teams that enter the competition. They get cut in half at this stage here. And then we head into what is a knockout round. So your first teams that qualified through, so the ones that come first in their group, they are ranked in one pot. And the ones that come in second go into another pot. And then basically you get drawn against one another. The idea being that you, if you came first, then you should have probably a slightly easier ride in the next round. So it's very important that teams strive for their first place, because I know Arsenal has been tripped up many, many a time, usually by Bayern Munich, by coming second in their group.
Now, it's also correct that for the knockout round, you can't be drawn against anybody that was in your group stage group.
Yes.
And you can't be drawn against anybody from your own national league.
Correct, yes. So you won't see the likes of, Manchester City and Manchester United play each other in the round of 16. In the quarterfinals, that's a definite possibility. Maybe not that particular matchup, but you will see 2 English clubs in the quarterfinals.
That's one thing that we should definitely talk about, is that all 4 English teams did advance through.
They did.
It was a little bit of a rough road. Interestingly enough, both Manchester teams had actually qualified for the round of 16 before the 2 games that happened on Tuesday and Wednesday. Actually, they both played today on Wednesday. They were already in and through.
I want to talk about the other 2 games yesterday. So that was Tuesday. And I tell you what, wow, this is why you love football. This is why you love football. You want to see these 2 English teams progress. Liverpool, we're talking about, and Tottenham. And didn't they just make it in by the skin of their teeth? That's what they would call squeaky bum time. That's what Alex Ferguson would call it, where you just get in there, your insides are palpitating, and you're hoping you're going to make it. And guess what? In the very last, you do.
The Liverpool game, that was particularly interesting, because what happened there was they were actually playing Napoli. This was extremely important for them to beat Napoli, because they came in at 6 points and Napoli was at 9 points. So what that means is that they had to win the game. Not only that, but Napoli had a goal differential of 1 above them.
Yes.
So what you were looking at is they had to win this game. Now, ideally, they wanted to try and win it by 2 goals. However, they only ended up winning by 1 goal.
Mm-hmm.
What allowed them to end up advancing was the second tiebreaker, which was away goals. Because they had scored at Napoli and they kept Napoli off the board yesterday and got a clean sheet, they were allowed to advance based on away goals. So, for instance, if Napoli had scored yesterday and then Liverpool had won 2-1, then at
What
that point, I
happens
think
then?
it goes to drawing straws or
Is that
something
right? Is that
something
right?
ridiculous, or yellow cards accumulated. I don't know if they
That,
do that in the champ.
oh, yeah, that actually could be it. I think there's a fair play component there, actually. You're right, Phil. But yeah, I'll tell you what, it doesn't get any tighter than that. It really doesn't get any tighter than that. They were very lucky yesterday, Liverpool. And of course, they're in a very strong group there too, with PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, and Napoli. That was a group of death right there. Poor old Napoli.
Absolutely.
I
And
think poor old Napoli were hard done by, actually.
even the fourth team in that group, Red Star Belgrade, was no slouch. They actually knocked off Liverpool.
They
It
did.
was one of the reasons they were in such a tough spot in the first
They did. They
place.
did. They did. And then in the other group there, we had Inter Milan from Italy. We had Tottenham. And they were looking for the last place there because Barcelona had already secured their entry into the round of 16. So the Barcelona result, I beg your pardon. Tottenham was looking to beat Barcelona at the Nou Camp. I don't know if
Because at the same time, Inter Milan was playing PSV, and if Inter Milan had beaten PSV,
Yep,
then Tottenham would have needed to beat Barcelona
that's
in
right.
order to advance. Luckily for Tottenham, PSV ended up getting a tie with Inter Milan, which meant that Tottenham also only needed to draw with Barcelona, which they did
They
end up getting that 1-1 result.
They did. They did. I watched this match. I'm not much of a Tottenham fan, and I think I was telling you, I was going for Barcelona in that game because I just like the style of football. But I tell you what, Tottenham are actually excellent. They're very attacking. The first goal was a little bit unlucky. Barcelona's first goal was a little bit unlucky, but they pushed that game the entire way. That was a very impressive Tottenham game, I have to say. And you know what? It brings us into our next segment here, Phil, doesn't it?
Absolutely. At the just to touch back on what you were saying real quick, anytime you get a draw with Barcelona, that's a good performance in
Especially
my book.
Barcelona at home as well. Like that's 70,000 strong crowd there. They don't let up for the full 90 minutes. Like that's a cauldron there. It's an incredible experience. So I've been told, haven't been there. But yeah, it's certainly intimidating, for those away teams. So yeah, you're right. Yes, 1-1. Tottenham, well done, lads. Good job.
And I think that we should probably mention that like you said, you watched the Spurs and Barcelona game. Well, I watched the Liverpool and Napoli game, and that was an interesting stat. Really, Liverpool winning 1-0. It really shouldn't have been that close. They just really had a lot of opportunities that they didn't finish, and for a game they won 1-0, they actually had an expected goals of 3.4.
Oh dear.
So they realistically squandered 2 to 3 opportunities that they should have scored on it. And I think that was the underlying story of the Liverpool game was, yes, they won, but they probably should have blown Napoli out.
Right. Again, that probably speaks to Napoli. And who scored the goal yesterday? I don't think we've spoken about Mo Salah yet, have we?
We have talked about him a little bit on a few other shows. We did mention last week he is one of the top goal scorers, but
Right.
and that's actually a good segue into our next conversation. Is one of the reasons that I chose to watch the Liverpool game is because they're a team that I actually enjoy playing. I like their coach Jurgen Klopp. I like Mo Salah. I like Sadio Mane. They're a fun team to watch. I enjoy Liverpool. But then if you're an Arsenal fan and you're like Aaron and you're watching the Spurs, then it really becomes a question of, okay, are you a Premier League fan first and
Right.
foremost, and you're just going to root for the Premier League team regardless, or does your rivalry carry over where you're just going to root against the Spurs no matter who they're playing?
Right. My answer to you at the time was, I am going for any team other than Tottenham. And you know what? That probably comes down to the fact that, I'm not English. So whether I support the English league more than other leagues, I think that's a moot point in my particular case. I like the game of football, and I think Barcelona plays a very attractive brand of football. Having said that, Tottenham actually played a very, very good game of football the other day as well. So I can admire teams, but I won't necessarily go for a team just because they're English. And it's really funny because I think the very second I texted you that, we were talking about this, watching the matches. One of my good friends, Adam, who's from Ipswich in the UK, he is, and I have to say, he's a full-on Chelsea nut. This guy, if you cut him, he bleeds blue. He is insanely Chelsea. And he posts, "Come on, Spurs and Liverpool, you can do it." The moment I sent that text to you, Phil, and I couldn't help it but just ask the question. I'm like, so why would you support a rival team in the Champions League? And you know what? He comes up with basically what we're going to talk about shortly with regards to American conferences. He says, "I always support English teams in Europe. You want them to do well to help create a reputation for English teams." And he goes on to say, also, they're not a rival team as Chelsea isn't in the Champions League this year. Womp womp. Neither's Arsenal, but that's beside the point.
And that's been kind of my feeling too, watching the Champions League, is that the English league is my league that I watch, then I'm going to root for English teams because, and like you said, I mean, Arsenal's not in the Champions League, so, why not root for the Spurs? Why am I going to go and root for a Spanish team,
Right.
or an Italian team, for instance, when there's important things like league rankings? For instance, the top 3 ranked leagues in Europe, which right now are Spain, England, and Germany, each get a guaranteed 4 slots in the Champions League and can have up to 5. So if your teams are going to the Champions League and, say for whatever reason the Spurs are going every year and finishing 4th in their group, that's going to hurt the league ranking, and eventually the English league ends up getting less total teams, which takes money away from the league
Money,
and
yes.
ultimately players out of the league.
Yep, you're quite right. I mean, if it looks like that the Premier League is struggling a little bit, you're probably going to see that there will be some of those top quality players leaving. And then the Spanish League has certainly taken a good number of Premier League players, not necessarily English players, but Premier League players back in recent years. So you're talking, your Ronaldos and, well, even like people like Gareth Bale, for example, who was Welshman, played for Tottenham. Tottenham sold him to Real Madrid. And there's more money there for the moment. But here's the thing about that. I don't see English teams having a reduction anytime soon. The reason being is that outside of Europe, they also have this international broadcast pool as well. I mean, we can watch the games here in America. So I would see, and I'm pretty sure UEFA, which is a governing body there in Europe, they would see that and go, oh, well, we'll still keep them there just for the historical cachet, if you will.
But overall, if the teams aren't doing well in the league, then the TV money's going to go down. And, let's say that for instance, the quality of play in Bundesliga just goes through the roof, and all of a sudden there's 9 or 10 great teams in Bundesliga. And maybe there's only 3 good teams in the English league. All of a sudden, all of that TV money is going to go to Germany.
Right, but okay, let me put it this way, Phil. In the World Cup, who are we going for when the US men's national team don't qualify? 2018. Would you go for England or Germany?
I would go for England.
Yeah, there you go. But you know what? At the end of the day, I don't think it really matters. We can't.
I usually go for Belgium.
That's true. That's true. How is your fantasy league going? Your fantasy league team going? Just out of curiosity.
I've actually gotten back over 500.
Yeah.
I'm at 8-7-1. I've moved to the top half of the table, which doesn't sound that great, but I think I had about a 1-4 start. I had a pretty rough start to the season, but there's still plenty of weeks
That's
left.
right. That's right. I think we're even halfway through. We're about a couple of games shy of halfway through the season, which is great. But you did actually fill your team full of Belgian players at the beginning, didn't you? I don't actually have a fantasy Premier League team, so let's not talk about that. Oh God, I'm terrible. Oh, I can talk this game bollocks till the sun comes down. But gee, do you think I can pick a squad? No, I got nothing.
I've been telling you to pick up Callum Wilson for 2 months now.
Well, he's injured, isn't he?
Well, he is now, but
Yeah, well, anyway, yes, all right. I maybe you should listen to you a little bit more because you've certainly learned a lot about this game over the past few months. We digress, nonetheless. Just one last thing, actually, on that. You wanted to go and make an equivalency between Champions League and, say, conferences here in football or basketball or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think that the easiest way for American fans to understand is that with professional sports, like if there's baseball, for instance, and I'm an Arizona Diamondbacks fan, I'm certainly not going to root for the Dodgers in the World Series, or if I'm a Yankees fan, I'm not going to root for the Red Sox in the World Series. But that's all within one league that these are all happening.
Right.
Once again, the easiest comparison, and even more so, we use college basketball a lot on the show, but this is a lot more almost like college football, where when you have bowl games where at the end of the season, top several teams from each conference will qualify for a bowl game, and these are big money games where if a team gets to the bowl game, they make money for the school that allows them to upgrade their facilities, whatnot.
Really? I thought that went back into academics. Really? Don't listen to me. What would I know? What do I know? I know nothing about college sports. Go ahead.
When teams go and they do well at the bowl games, it improves the cachet of the conference.
Right.
That's why you would sometimes, and it's hard for maybe a Michigan fan necessarily to ever root for Ohio State, but at the same time, there are fans out there that will always root for the teams in their conference at the bowl games, because that's their way of, they can say, my team is the best because 7 other teams from my conference went to the bowl games. They all won their bowl games against the other conferences.
Right.
And that's where a conference like the SEC, which is the Southeastern Conference, with teams like Alabama, Auburn, Florida, all these big name schools, they feed off of the strength of each other. In other words, if Alabama was the only good team in the SEC, it would be harder for them to attract good players. Whereas if every year they know that the SEC is the best conference, they're going to send 8 teams to bowl games. They're going to bring in all the best athletes.
Right.
And that's the reason to root for the teams in your conference. Is once you're in the bowl game and it's not a conference matchup, then at that point, you're really not playing against each other in the same league anymore. And that's how the Champions League, I feel, relates to the Premier League in this situation.
Right. So you're saying it strengthens the breed a little bit, I guess you could say. You've got a successful team. You're going to have other teams challenge for that. It has its own momentum. It builds, yeah?
Exactly. And the other thing I see is if a Premier League team is winning the Champions League every year, then you don't have an Eden Hazard saying, hey, I want to go to Real Madrid, I want to leave Chelsea because I really want to win the Champions League.
Right. Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. I think basically at the end of the day, though, we can't really tell you who to go for because football isn't really... a love of football isn't about, who's good on paper, and it's more about where your heart lies. And honestly, If your heart decides that you hate Michigan as a Michigan State fan, then go ahead. Feel free to root against them in the bowl game.
Oh, absolutely. I think that every fan has their own preferences, and I think at the end of the day, there's arguments to be made for either side. I mean, I'm pretty certain those guys you talked about spitting out the window at the tavern are probably not rooting for the Spurs at the Champions League.
Well, oh God. Again, I, I think that was actually my answer now that I think back about it, Phil. You kind of want them to do well, but not that well. All right. So if they get into the round of 16, okay, good for you, lads. If they win the damn thing, oh God, we're never going to hear the end of it. No, that can't happen. All right.
Yeah, I think that we can settle on that we both want the Spurs to finish second the Champions League.
Oh, God bless them. But they're not going to finish up in the Europa League this year, are they?
No, but there are actually 8 new teams that are going to the Europa League, and those would be the 8 teams that finished third place in their group. That would be the teams that we mentioned earlier, Inter Milan and Napoli, were third place in their respective groups, and they will now potentially be an opponent for Arsenal or Chelsea in the Europa League.
Yes. And it does get very interesting this time of year in the Europa League because you do get the also Rans dropping down from the Champions League, and it does add a little bit of excitement to this competition, which is, you know, a little bit lopsided up until this point because you've got your likes of Arsenal and Chelsea playing. Who, Phil? Who's Arsenal playing?
What you've really seen so far in the Europa League is Arsenal and Chelsea playing a bunch of what are called minnows.
Right.
And those are teams from smaller leagues in college basketball, the NCAA tournament. They would refer to these as Cinderella teams.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
So your minnows, and Arsenal certainly has an interesting minnow. Now this is actually their second game. They've already played away here. They're playing Qarabag from Azerbaijan. They're currently ranked second in the Azerbaijan Championship.
Really? Wow, look at them go. That's good.
They are the defending champion of that league from last year. So as you see, the defending champion of the Azerbaijan league, their whole goal for the season is to be able to get to the Europa League, just to be able to play against Arsenal, kind of the same way that a Harvard would try to win the Ivy League to be able to get to the tournament, just to be able to play a Duke or a North Carolina.
I actually didn't realize Ivy League was an actual league. I thought that was just a posh name for those posh colleges over there on the East Coast. So there's an actual league. Is that what they call it?
Yes, it's an actual league. It's the Ivy League. It's like Harvard, Yale, Brown, Cornell, Princeton. When the Ivy League formed, they all made an agreement that none of the schools of the Ivy League would give any scholarships based on athletics, so that they would completely be focused on academics. And that's why the Ivy League schools obviously struggle, is they don't have scholarship athletes.
Oh, there you go. Thank you for filling me in on that. I had no idea. I just thought that was...
Now, that doesn't mean that an occasional great doesn't show up. For instance, I'm sure you've heard of the NFL quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick. He actually is a graduate of Harvard.
I did not know that. We digress, however, because the Qarabag coach is an interesting man with an interesting name. And I'm going to say, can I say it? Can I say it?
Yeah, let's go ahead and say it.
Gurban Gurbanov. Gurban Gurbanov. He sounds like a hell of a character. He certainly has a lot of history behind him, this guy, doesn't he?
Yes, and Gurban Gurbanov is actually our coach of the week. And I'm going to be honest right now and say I was just looking over the program for tomorrow's game, and I saw the name Gurban Gurbanov, and I said, I've got to read about this guy. And as it turns out, I'm glad that I did, because he is literally quite an impressive footballer, football coach. He is definitely ultimately what Ryan Fitzpatrick is to Harvard, Gurban Gurbanov is to Azerbaijan football. And just to give a little bit of a history Azerbaijan is actually a former republic of the Soviet Union, gained their independence, I believe, sometime late 80s, early 90s, and their very first national football team as an independent nation in 1992. Gurban Gurbanov was actually a member of that team, played for the national team for many years, it still is the all-time leading goal scorer in Azerbaijan history. He is now taken to coaching. Not only has he been coaching Qarabag, he's actually the coach of the Azerbaijan national team. Also, he has taken Qarabag to the Europa League group stage, which is where they're at right now with Arsenal several times, which is the furthest that any Azerbaijan teams have ever gotten in the Europa League. So, I mean, this guy is literally the history of Azerbaijan football. Gurban Gurbanov is... and the thing that I like the most about this guy is he truly appears to be somebody that just has a great respect for the game and knowledge of the game worldwide. I actually translated one of his interviews.
You did. Oh.
Yeah, I,
I just
I these are the things that you're getting out across the pitch that you would not get anywhere else. It's the translated interview of Gurban Gurbanov on tomorrow's Arsenal matchup. He says, "It is our last game in the group stage, and our opponent is Arsenal, one of the UK's oldest clubs, and we know that the opponent is one of the giants of England this season. And tomorrow we will come out and show a good game, and we will try to give the best show of ourselves."
Good for them. Oh, I love that fighting spirit. And you know what? They'll probably score a goal, and they'll be happy with that. They'll be happy with that. And
well, probably if Peter Cech is out there.
be nice. That'd be nice. Just to give you some sort of disparity between these two teams. So you're talking about the Ivy League versus
the ACC.
ACC. Okay. Qarabag, they're in Baku, Azerbaijan. Can I also just say, I don't think Azerbaijan has been mentioned so many times in any conversation ever outside of Azerbaijan as it has in the last 5 minutes here. But here's the disparity. So Qarabag are going to Arsenal tomorrow. The Emirates Stadium in North London is 62,000 seats. Their home ground is capacity 58,000. That's not even 10%. It's not even 10% the size of the Arsenal Stadium. Like that's how big a disparity
is. Is it 5,800?
5,800, yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure you said 5,800 or 58,000.
Oh, if I said 58,000, I probably did. I meant 5,800. Drop one of those zeros off. Yes. And that's 10%, or even less than 10% of the Arsenal Stadium. So that's a huge disparity. And it's quite remarkable.
About 2,000 less than our Phoenix Rising Stadium here for the USL.
Oh, wow. There you go. Absolutely. Remarkable. And here they are playing against the likes of us.
It very closely compares in capacity to the Wham Stadium. The Wham Stadium of Accrington is a little bit smaller, but yeah, I mean the Qarabag Stadium is roughly somewhere in between the Wham Stadium and the Phoenix Rising Stadium. So you're talking a USL team, which is one league below MLS in the US, or a League One, the lowest capacity stadium in League One, which is the third tier of English soccer. Right. So that's right around where this team is. So, I mean, if this team was an English team, they would probably play in League One, I would guess.
Yes, I would imagine so. Phil, you have a wonderful way of segueing into next segment. You mentioned the Wham Stadium, so Accrington Stanley was our team of the month last month. Who is our team of the month this month?
Our team of the month this month is Sheffield United. We wanted to thank our winners from the contest. We had 2 people that submitted the correct answer. The winner of our contest was Bobby Krill.
Hey, Bobby! Let's get some
Bobby will
sound effects in
be
there,
getting
Phil.
the Phoenix Rising sticker in the mail shortly that we've sent out to him. He's actually here in Arizona. Thank you, Bobby, for listening to the show. I also wanted to give a shout out to our other correct answer, Matt Robards, another Phoenix Rising fan, and he's had some good banter with us on Facebook.
He
And
did. He did.
we appreciate you listening to the show, sending in the correct answer, and you were just a few minutes behind Bobby, and we'll have another contest coming up. I would say within the next episode or two.
By the way, going back to the Champions League question there, Matt Robards, bless him, says Arsenal fans should absolutely not root for Tottenham. That was a very, very adamant statement from Matt. So thank you for your input,
And I
Matt.
believe that Matt is a Chelsea fan.
He is?
Yes, I believe he's a Chelsea fan.
I'm sorry about that, mate.
Congrats on the win over Man City. We definitely had your back at that one.
Yeah, we did. I think actually most of the league did, apart from those crying Man City fans.
Yeah, they look like Yankee fans crying every time they lose one game. Back to our team of the month, Sheffield United. We have quite an interesting matchup coming up on Friday. For those of you here in the U.S., it will be on at 2:40 p.m. Eastern Time. That's Sheffield United against West Bromwich Albion. It's an important game in the...
Sorry, mate, I have to do it. You know I do. It's important. I feel it's important. Just so our listeners out there are somewhat educated, they don't sound like they're new to the game. So pronunciation of the teams is important. So that's West
Go with
Bromwich.
that one more time. You go ahead and you read off the fixture at that.
Okay. So at 12:40 p.m. Eastern, what day was that? Sorry,
Friday.
Phil. Friday. Okay, so lunchtime viewing here for you. Sheffield United versus West Bromwich Albion.
And that's going to be on ESPN Plus here in the U.S. Well worth the $5 a month, as you're going to get great games like this every week.
Yep. I'm not looking for sponsorship from these guys, but I have to say, $5 a month for these games that you get on there. That is excellent value. Anyone got the number for ESPN?
We watch all the time. This is an important matchup, and it's particularly important in the promotion relegation side of things. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the where these teams are at the standings and how it affects the potential promotion standings up to the Premier League next year?
Right. So EFL Championship has a slightly different setup to promotion and relegation. So in the Premier League, your bottom 3 teams automatically get relegated down to the Championship, which is the Division 2, I guess you could say, below the Premier League.
And that's the division that we're talking about right now with Sheffield.
Right. So your Division 2, or the Championship, if you will, you have the top 2 teams automatically qualify into promotion into the Premier League. And currently, as if the table, if the end of the season was today, Norwich and Leeds United would be promoted into the Premier League. Interestingly, Leeds United, I don't think, has been in the Premier League since 2006. So that would be very, very interesting after they had some very, very big financial problems back then. So the first 2 qualify automatically to go up into the Premier League. Then what happens is the third place is decided by a playoff situation. So teams 3 through 6, which currently is Sheffield United, Derby County is in 4th, West Brom is in 5th, and Middlesbrough is in 6th. Either all 4 of those teams go into a playoff situation whereby they basically shoot it out for that third promotion place.
this game is third versus fifth, and am I correct that
Correct.
those four teams are only separated by 1 point?
Absolutely correct, Phil. Yes. So Sheffield and Derby County are both on 37 points, separated by goal difference, and West Brom is on 36. And interestingly, as I look at this, West Brom has the better goal difference. So it's a fascinating game. West Brom was relegated last year. Sheffield United, can't remember the last time they were in the Premier League. Certainly haven't been since I've been watching the game. It'll be a very interesting match. Both teams are playing very, very well. Just a fun little fact about that third place promotion game. That is the richest game in world sports. So that playoff game between whoever wins the knockout stages there between the four teams, they go to Wembley, they play a game between the two winners, or the two victors of the previous matches. The winner of that game wins the most moneyed trophy in history in any sport.
Really, that's interesting. How much do they win?
£60 million.
Wow.
Which I don't know how to translate that to American dollars.
Right,
I'm going to guess probably about 85. Well, yeah, maybe about 80 million. That's $75 million. And now, admittedly, that isn't just the prize money. The majority of that's the gap between a newly promoted team and those guys that are left behind. 60 million. Sorry, beg your pardon. $75 million.
That's basically what they need to be able to afford the players to compete in the Premier League.
Without a doubt. There's a whole lot of operations that comes behind that as well. Being in the Premier League, you're going to have to expand that front office, if you will. You are going to have to have a deeper roster, but also you've got all that marketing and everything else that comes along with it as well, all that expense. Another little fun fact about that, because that is such a rich game, like the promise of riches by winning that game is so huge. They played at Wembley, which is the England National Stadium. It holds 80-odd thousand people. It's divided half-half. The ticket sales are pretty much half-half between the two teams that are vying for that promotion place. The gate takings from that day goes to the loser as some sort of, sorry.
Not a bad consolation.
It's a good consolation prize. I don't know. It's probably a couple of $1 million.
At least.
Yeah. That's all right. I'm sure they're probably not real happy about losing that anyway. Moving on, we're going to have a look forward to this weekend's games, Phil, and there's one in particular which is an absolute belter. It's one of those rivalries, even though they're not within the same city, they're damn close. They're 35 miles apart, and we're talking about the Manchester United versus Liverpool game this weekend. This is a storied matchup, and this has a history behind it. A hatred between the two towns that goes back to the Industrial Revolution, whereby Manchester merchants were a little bit off-put by having to pay Liverpool their dock fees because Liverpool was the port at the time. So they decided to build the Liverpool-Manchester Railway, but also the Manchester Ship Canal. So they basically bypassed the docks in Liverpool. And you can imagine that rankled quite a few people in Liverpool. I don't think they're real happy about that. Across the years of not just the Premier League, but years prior to the Premier League, where it's just the first division, they are two of the most successful clubs in English football. They're a powerhouse. Those two towns are powerhouses of football in England. That rivalry has been going for eons, basically as long as the game has been around.
And this game on Sunday, it's really important to both teams for different reasons. I would say this is a must-win game for both sides.
I mean, obviously, Liverpool wants to be, leading the race. They want to be out there in front of the peloton. Manchester United definitely needs some sort of result, and that's purely because, that Fulham game aside, they've looked a bit shaky.
What I'm looking at is I certainly don't see Man City falling to Everton and losing 2 in a row. I think they're going to come out and steamroll Everton. I feel bad for them this week. So, what you're really looking at is, I guess this is assuming that by Sunday they're going to already have that result. Liverpool's got to win if they want to stay ahead of Man City, and I don't think that they're a team you want to fall behind. And Manchester United, if they drop another 3 points, I mean, they're really at this point looking at they're just not going to get to the top 4.
They're not. They're 8 points behind Arsenal, and Arsenal's not even the top 4. Well, Chelsea is also 8 points on goal difference, but that's a big gap at this time of year. If Manchester lose on the weekend, I mean, there's a potential that Bournemouth could leapfrog them, and Manchester United, I beg your pardon, are out of European places. But here's the other thing as well. Man City aren't going to drop many games this season. So, yeah, Liverpool needs to win against the top 6, and they also need to continue winning against the lower teams in the table. Because Manchester City aren't going to lose points that often this season.
I feel like last week was Man City's slip-up, and now Liverpool is really going to need to keep their foot on the gas, because if they fall back behind, Manchester City might not give them another chance to get back ahead.
No, I think you're quite right. And you can bet your bottom dollar that Pep Guardiola, the manager of Man City, he has been running those guys ragged in training this week. Yes, poor old Everton. Poor old Everton.
That might be one that I have to look at the betting line on.
Yeah, it's probably worth having a look at. I mean, Everton haven't been playing too bad at all. You know, that Richarlison is a good little player.
That's another guy that's on my fantasy team, and he certainly he scored against Watford, his old team, and in less than, as we said, half the games this season already, I believe that he has 3 more goals this year than he had all last year for Watford.
Yeah, right. Wow. Better supply through the midfield. Richarlison, by the way, is a forward for Everton. But yeah, certainly a better supply would help. But he's probably one of those guys that is going to blossom there. I think he's going to do quite well. He's definitely one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, he's on the Brazilian national team. I mean, this is a kid that's only 21 too, and I mean, he's got 8 goals in 14 games. He doesn't have any assists, so he's pretty much purely a goal scorer. You know, he's on pace for 16, 17 goals, and I think just about any team would take that out of their top scorer for the year.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We were going to talk about our player to watch for, but I think that might have been him, actually.
Yeah, I definitely, I think that Richarlison, I mean, like we said, I mean, he's already eclipsed his goal total from last year in less than half of the season, 21 years old. Definitely the star for Everton right now. You know, if Everton didn't have him right now, they'd probably be looking at relegation zone.
I would absolutely agree, yeah. You know, I give Everton a hard time. I really do. I have a soft spot for Everton. I always have. But they haven't been great. They really haven't been great. He is their one bright spot, you know.
One impressive fact about Everton that I think merits bringing up is that since the founding of the modern Premier League in 1992, Everton is one of only 6 teams that's never been relegated. Even Man City can't say that.
True. So the other ones are, of course, Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester United. Who else?
Chelsea and the Spurs.
So there's your top 4 and 6. Right. Well, 6 now that you've got these interlopers, Man City. Let's go and have some questions, shall we? I have one here from Martin, who says on our Facebook page, across the facebook.com/across the pitch, he's talking about Arthur Blank maybe looking at buying out Newcastle United. Now, Newcastle United, their owner, Mike Ashley, has not made it a secret that he wants to sell the club, and he's not really putting much money into the club. And I have to say, Rafa Benitez, the manager, is doing an excellent job in at least even getting them up to promotion stage and into the Premier League last year. For him to keep them there, you know, I think there has to be a change in management. And this is basically what Martin was saying there. He's saying, you know, this guy, Arthur Blank, may be buying it out. He says Ashley out, hashtag Ashley out, because good on you, Marty, keeping up with the kids. But he also asks us, I've heard he's involved in other US sports in the US. What's his reputation like as an owner?
this is probably where I should take over on this. Arthur Blank, I think that first and foremost, it's important to establish how he made his fortune. He's actually the founder of Home Depot. For those of you outside of the U.S., Home Depot is a big box retailer, home improvement store, either the largest or second largest in the U.S. between them and Lowe's. I'm not sure, but so bottom line is this guy has
just for
dollars,
my
and he
has dollars.
so he's based in Atlanta. He's the owner of the Atlanta Falcons. As owner of the Atlanta Falcons, he's never won a Super Bowl. He has taken them to the Super Bowl recently. Well, I mean, not taken, but as an owner, they were recently in the Super Bowl as of 2 years ago. I think that he's always been a solid owner. The team has been, say, enjoyed its most success historically since he's taken over. Perhaps more importantly and relevant, especially now, is that he's actually the owner of the MLS franchise Atlanta United FC, who just won the last Saturday won the MLS Cup in only their second year in existence. And this is a team that's selling out football stadiums. He's
Incredible
selling
crowds.
out an American football stadium with an association football team. And in only 2 years, he's taken this team all the way to the championship. There's some people that say that, this team he's built in Atlanta has talent to maybe go in and compete overseas, is how good this team is.
Remarkable. I mean, that team recently added to the MLS, and yes, they're selling out huge crowds. I can't believe the size of these crowds. And not only are they just selling out and they're sitting on their hands, they are jumping. I haven't seen passion for that game as I have in Atlanta. That is incredible what they're doing down there. So back to Marty's question, is he okay? I don't know. Do you think he's going to be good? What's his reputation like as an owner? I'm probably going to give him 2 thumbs up because he knows how to make a football team win, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely. I think that if he steps in, you immediately go from a big 6 to a big 7. That goes to improving the strength of the English league, which we talked about earlier is important. I think the only concern with him is his age. I'm not sure exactly how old he is, but he's got to be close to 80, I want to say. So, I mean...
Well, that's okay. It means he's not going to be smashing pies and sculling beers, as Mike Ashley is known to do.
Hey, that Ashley sounds like what kind of guy?
Well, I'll be there with him, actually. So, yeah. Thank you, Marty, for the question. Good question. Really excited to see if that happens for Newcastle United. Newcastle United are a big team. They're a big team that have bounced between the Championship and the Premier League over the years. It's about time they were re-established, I believe, as a proper, genuine Premier League side. As my mate Marty said once upon a time, you Arsenal fans have it wonderful. You just want to get into 4th place and be done with it. We're battling for our survival every season. So thank you, Marty, for the question. If you'd like to submit a question, you can do so on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/acrossthepitch. You can also do it on our website, acrossthepitch.com, and we will be sure to add it into our next session.
You can also send us an email directly at contact@acrossthepitch.com. And before we wrap up for the day, I wanted to go over, kind of do a new segment where we go over the gambling lines for the week. I've got the lines here. We're using sportsbook.com as our official lines.
Give us a call.
And so the first one that we're taking a look at here is the Manchester City versus Everton game that we talked about earlier. Now, Manchester City is heavily favored at minus 500. Minus 500, what you're looking at is having to bet $10 to win $2. So, not a real big
That's
payoff.
not real good. No.
which it's maybe something that you would want to do what's called a parlay with another bet, because if you parlay your bets, what you're basically doing is you're picking 2 winners or 3 winners, and all of your games have to come through, but then you get paid a multiple. So if you wanted to pick a couple of safe games this week, I would say that maybe you could take a look at Manchester City over Everton at minus 500, and then I would parlay that with Arsenal is only minus 109. They're at Southampton, which I think is a great matchup for Arsenal.
Yep.
Minus 109, you're almost at even money
Yes.
right there.
Yep.
So by parlaying Manchester City with Arsenal, I get up plus 129, which means on a $100 bet, I'd be betting 100 with the potential of winning 129. So what that essentially means, you bet your 100. If you win, you get 229 back, your original 100 plus 129. So that's going to be our bet pick of the week. 2-team parlay on Arsenal and Manchester City at plus 129.
Thank you, Phil. If you listened to last week's podcast, you're probably better off listening to Phil. This guy knows about this sort of stuff when it comes to, backing a winner. How did it end up with my bet? 1-1 draw, Manchester United versus Fulham over the weekend. It was wrong. It was wrong. And by wrong, I mean it was a long way wrong. Manchester United ended up beating him 4-1. So at least I got one score right.
That was a steamroller.
Nevertheless.
Hey, but that's the nature of prognostications. Is you're going to win some, you're going to lose some.
Yes.
And we just won't ever talk about that one again.
Sounds good to me.
All right, well, I think that's about all we have for the evening, unless you had anything else.
I think we're ready to go to bed, Phil.
All right, we will hit the scratcher then.
Good use of terminology, love it.
Thank you again, as always, for joining us on Across the Pitch. Once again, my name is Phil Kennedy. I'm here with Aaron Ayers every week, my brother from down under. And we will talk to you again about some English football next week.